All right, so chapter 7 of the Weight Loss Specialist Manual. This is going to be basic training methodologies for weight loss, which, whenever I hear that title, I'm always thinking it's like, okay, these are the different things that you do for a client with weight loss. But it's like, not really. Like, these are just like your general training principles, right? We're going to apply, our general information about the OPT model. And then, like, obviously, these will have a positive benefit on, body composition and stuff. So after completing this section, we'll be able to understand the rationale and the ways to implement cardiorespiratory and resistance training for the goal of weight loss. We'll also be familiar with some of the methodologies that are going to assist with that weight loss. And we are going to talk about implementing a progressive weight loss program using NASM's OPT model, right? So, how do we take someone through like a full cycle of, maybe this style of training and then that style of training and, kind of change things up. So just starting off, like, obviously we've said this before, but weight loss is the leading reason that most people are joining like a health club or a health gym. Like most people that like the most of your clients that walk through the door are like, you ask them like, what are you here for? And they're like, I'm here to lose weight, right? Like that's the most common. And so obviously, like in our role of like assisting with that, the importance of like being active and engaging in exercise cannot be overstated. And the goal is to try to develop as much of what we call EPOC as possible, or excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, which we'll talk a lot about here in just a little bit. But basically, your body burns extra oxygen after intense work in order to sort of like catch back up and produce like, enough ATP and stuff. So you get to burn like extra calories from the work that you did earlier in the day during your workout and stuff. So kind of a good deal there. So our job, what we're trying to do today is to complement those dietary strategies that we have been talking pretty extensively about for the last couple of weeks, with our exercise routines in order to not only help someone lose fat, but also like increase their lean body mass. So there's a really fun, like right in the beginning of this chapter, when you guys read it, there's a really good bit right in the beginning that talks about how dieting alone can result in weight loss. Absolutely. If you curated calorie deficit by dieting, of course you're going to lose weight, but your body is eating away and lowering your BMR and your metabolism in response to, the lack of calories that you're getting. It's getting those calories from somewhere. It's going to get them from, it's almost like balancing the books, right? Like, when you hear about like companies like firing people, right? Like when they're doing like layoffs because they need to like balance their budget or whatever. They always fire from the top, not like the top, because that's because companies are dumb, but can't be dumb. A lot of times they'll fire like the upper, people who have been there longer, who are making a bigger salary because they're costing the company more money, and so like your body kind of does the same thing. It's like, if I'm going to get rid of some type of tissue, which tissue am I going to get rid of? The one that burns like 10 calories an hour, the one that burns like 15 calories per hour, and it's like, well, we're going to get rid of the one that burns 15 and we're going to go with the muscle mass. So a lot of times when someone goes on a diet, they will lose weight, but some of it's fat mass and some of it's lean body mass. Generally, that ratio, and these are definitely, for the record, being really clear here, these are definitely not like flat numbers. We see these fluctuate a lot depending on the client. But on average, what was observed is through diet alone, about 69% of the weight lost was from fat and about 31% of it was from lean body mass. So that's still pretty good. That's not a bad ratio by any means. If you had a client who was, 200 pounds and they were to, they have 20% body fat, let's say, that means that they have 40 pounds of fat. So if they were to lose like 200 pounds, you know, they got 40 pounds of fat mass there. If they were to lose, let's say half of that, right? Let's say they lose like 20 pounds, right? Well, 69% of it is going to be from fat loss. So if we would go, you know, 20 times 0.69. So they'd lose about 13.8 pounds of body fat, and they would lose about 6.2 pounds of lean mass. And so now it's like, okay, they were 200 pounds, they lost 20 pounds. So now they're 180. And they have lost 13 of the 40 pounds. So 40 pounds minus 13.8. That leaves us with 26.2 pounds of fat. So 26.2 divided by 180. That means that their body fat percentage dropped to 14.5%. That's pretty good, you know? It's not bad. But so 14.5% in our example that we see here. But now let's say our client drops 20 pounds and they're doing a little bit of cardio along with that diet, right? So now in addition to, you know, maybe instead of just creating a calorie deficit by cutting out calories, now they're creating a calorie deficit by cutting out half as many calories and the other remaining same, you know, to get to the same number, the same deficit they were created before. Let's say that version now they do it by, you know, half cardio. So it's half cardio, half diet. Okay, great. So now if we look at their fat loss, it'll be about 78% of the ratio will be fat loss and only about 22% will be lean mass. So again, 20 pounds of weight lost times 0.78, that's going to be 15.6 pounds of fat this time. So that's only 4.4 pounds of lean body mass lost. So then, you know, 15.6 minus 4, so they got 24.4 pounds left divided by a new body weight of 118. So now their body fat dropped all the way down to 13.5%. That's, you know, 1% less body fat. You know, that could be the difference between, you know, seeing just the top two abs and, you know, maybe the next two. But then, like, let's say we look at like diet plus like resistance training. They're saying exercise here, but diet plus resistance training, right? Resistance training is a really terrific way to maintain your lean body mass, because now your body is going, oh man, like we're using these muscles. I can't get rid of that tissue. Like that stuff is vital to our survival. So instead, the tissue that it taps into is your fat tissue, which is great. That's what we're going for. So now we're going to see about 97% of like fat loss and only about 3% of lean body mass. So again, 20 pounds times 0.9, 20 pounds times 0.97. That means that of the 20 pounds they lose, 19.4 of it is going to be body fat, right? So that leaves us with 0.6. So that means that they're going to have 20.6 pounds of body fat left out of their new body weight of 180. And that gives them about 11.4% body fat. Not bad, you know? That is pretty darn good. So that's definitely, you know, the way that we want to go. So we like a really good combination of like diet and exercise when it comes to losing body weight. So through resistance training, it may be sufficient to raise your metabolic rate by about 7% or about 100 calories each day, which is about 10 pounds a year, you know? So simply by like, let's say you just had somebody who doesn't change their diet, right? Or maybe they do change their diet, but they're like, they go to the gym and they're going to work out in kind of a weird way here. Like they go to the gym and they're like, all right, I'm going to lift weights until I burn exactly 100 calories, right? And so they burn exactly 100 calories, and then they increase their diet by 100 calories. So they're still in energy balance, right? Well, what will probably happen is that person will still probably lose a little bit of fat mass because they calibrated their increased energy intake based on like the amount of energy they burned while they were in the gym. But we see about a 7% increase in metabolic rate when you exercise regularly due to that excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. So now that person's probably going to lose, maybe they might even lose still an extra 10 pounds that year, could be equal to about 100 calories. And that number is going to be, fluctuate depending on the size of your client and stuff and, their age and things. But like, that's a pretty, awesome feature, right? A lot of people who just start engaging in exercise will lose weight without even really having to think too much about it, unless they're, unless something else happens. It depends on like if they're a hard gainer or not. So this is where we're talking about, we're talking about EPOC, but we also need to have a conversation about NEAT. Okay, so NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis, is a phenomenon, I guess, that represents one's basic activities of daily living and includes fidgeting, standing, and moving around. So basically, this is the amount of additional energy that someone burns throughout the day based on like kind of, honestly, their personality or their lifestyle or whatever. Like I said, like my dad is a knee bouncer. I'm a knee bouncer. I'm a pencil tapper. I got a lot of nervous energy sometimes. Or like a lot of like bored energy. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Like when I go to a yoga, I've been to yoga classes and like, you're supposed to be in corpse pose and you're supposed to be like, very relaxed and stuff. And I'll be there and I'll be like drumming to like the music or something. And I've had people come by and be like, and it's like, I can't, like, I just, that's who this is why meditation's kind of hard for me. I got like a squirrel, so that means that like chances are my NEAT levels are a little bit higher. My dad and I both drive my mom crazy because we're both like very, kind of overly active people. And she's like, would you two just relax? She wants to kind of calm it down. So depending on how fidgety you are and things like that, you may be burning a lot of extra energy there. And so it's kind of funny because like we have actually seen that this is equally important as exercise in the realm of like calorie burn, at least in reducing your risk of mortality. We actually know that this is actually kind of a healthy habit to have. So like finding ways to increase activity throughout the day rather than just increasing, maybe having like a really hard workout in the morning can be a really effective way to boost one's metabolism and create these calorie deficits that we are aiming for, right? So it's all the calories burned throughout the day that isn't necessarily exercise. And so making small lifestyle choices have really positive benefits. Like let's say you park far away, that could be a really effective benefit, right? Because now every time you go somewhere, you're gonna have to, walk just a couple extra steps to get there. That's a habit that I actually don't do on purpose, but it does drive all my friends crazy. I totally will just take the very first parking spot that I see, even if it's, very, very, very far away. I did it when we went snowboarding last year, and it literally drove everyone nuts. They were like, no, pull it. And I was like, all right. So that's NEAT. That's one way to increase your NEAT. And then also like, what if you were to track like your steps per day? I don't know, we've got apps on our phones that can track our number of steps, watches that track our number of steps, pedometers could be a really effective way to check whether or not you're getting the same amount of energy. Like yesterday, I just had a little bit of extra energy after my workout and I was like, man, I need to do something. So I went for an extra little jog. I just went and did like, 2.5 miles or 3 miles, whatever it was. Quick little 20-minute run, nothing crazy, but it did leave me a little, I burned all that extra energy. So I was a little more tired after my workout. And so like when I looked at my steps that day, they were actually a little bit lower than they normally are. So tracking your steps could be a really effective way to kind of balance things out. I'm not saying that it's, you'll hear people say you got to get your 8 to 10,000 steps per day. I don't think it's as simple as a flat number like that. But I will say, if you have like a step goal of 10,000 every single day, guess what? you are flattening out the curve. You know, if you think about like your like what your day looks like in terms of like energy, right? It's like maybe you have some big fancy, you know, big complicated days where you're doing a lot of work and other days where you're not so much. Like ensuring that you are getting at least a minimum of 10,000 steps kind of flattens out that curve a little bit in really positive ways. And then taking the stairs, you know, learning how to take the stairs and things like that can also be really effective. Um, you know, taking small breaks throughout the day and going and doing a lap around the office, that can be a really great way to get some extra steps in. There's a lot of things that you can do to increase your NEAT. And it's funny because like NEAT often explains, like we talk about, like we know it's energy in versus energy out is explaining our success or failure in the realm of weight loss. So we know that like if you have someone who is on like a weight loss routine, they're not losing weight, and they're like, what's the deal? Like am I eating too much? And it's like, well, you might be eating the right amount, but your body could be slowing down. Maybe you were a leg bouncer before we started working out, and now because we're working out so often, you're a little more tired, you're not a leg bouncer anymore. That makes a small difference. And then you're also parking closer and you're not taking the stairs. They did a really interesting study where they basically trapped people in a room and they observed them. And they had one group work out and they had one group not work out. And they found that the group that worked out actually burned less calories than the group that did work out. That the group that did work out burned less calories than the group that didn't. And the reason they think that is because like the group that worked out was kind of exhausted. And so they kind of slowed down for the rest of the day. And you think about like your workout's 1 hour out of, you know, the 16 hours that we're active each day. So that's where NEAT honestly becomes a big part of the conversation. Sometimes like what I'm telling my clients, I'm like, look, like I need you to exercise. I need you to do your homework, but I also need you to like make sure you're trying to stay active regularly throughout the day. That's going to be, you know, a big deal. Any questions so far? Comments on NEAT? Kind of a fun concept, right? All righty. Yeah, I warped my coaster. So let's take a look at resistance training options for our clients who are engaging in a weight loss routine. So this is not necessarily, we're not diving into the OPT model just yet, but this is kind of some of the stuff we talked about last time we met up at Sochi, right? What are some of the methodologies? What are some of the techniques? What are some of the things that we can just generally focus on when we're writing an exercise routine? Well, we know that total body training is going to be a big part of this, right? Total body training implies the use of compound exercises where you're going to use several joints and several muscles simultaneously in one exercise. So a good example would be a dumbbell squat to overhead press, right? So in this version, my internet is blowing it today. In this version, they're not only doing a squat, which is a great, you know, great for the lower body, they're also doing a little bit of shoulder work. So let's say like, you know, you think about like how do you time out a workout, right? How do you time out how much work you can do in a workout? Like this morning, you know, I was doing sort of a mixture of heavy and light lifting. Right. So I did one heavy exercise at 2 minutes of rest, and I did 4 sets of that. And then I did 6 other exercises at 1 minute's rest for 4 sets each as well, with a couple supersets thrown in there where they're paired up and there's no rest in between. So that all timed out to about 58 minutes today in terms of strength training time. So you throw in a little bit of like warming up, you know, mobility stuff that I'm doing beforehand, and then you throw in the you know, cool down stuff that you do, like the stretching afterwards. Took about an hour 10, hour 15 minutes overall, you know. So okay, that's you know, that's maybe a little bit long. You know, a lot of our sessions are probably going to be about an hour. So we're trying to time out. It's like, okay, well, you know, I got about like 7 exercises in during my workout, right? So if you think that you're going to get about 7 exercises in, you're going to try to work as much muscle as you can within that time period. And that's going to mean that you're getting more bang for your buck. If I did squats and shoulder presses separately, I'm going to get half as many exercises in. But if I did a squat to shoulder press, now I'm getting both those muscles worked and I'm doing it in only one exercise. So it's just a much more efficient way to burn lots and lots of calories. And here's like a squat like curl to press, right? So now, we're getting a little bit of bicep work in there too. So this is sort of like, that's why I actually call this a thruster instead of calling it a squat to press. This is like in my opinion, like a squat curl to press. Blah. So, oh, no. I'm opening the wrong windows. So total body exercises are a really good one. Romanian deadlift to bent over row. Love this exercise. This is a really good compound movement where your client will actually do like a Romanian deadlift, then they'll do like a row. So they're getting a little bit of glutes, a little bit of hamstrings, minor bit of calf work, and then they're working, all those upper back muscles as well. So really good stuff there. Or maybe like a walking lunge to lateral raise, right? Something that's going to burn lots of energy by being that compound movement. This is a little bit of like glute, hamstring, quad work along with like shoulders as well. So that's something that we can focus on when we're writing our routines. We still need to follow our OPT rules. We need to pick stabilization versions, strength versions, power versions, depending on the client. But there's a great way to increase your calorie burn. And it has been shown to also increase growth hormone and testosterone levels for most clients, which is kind of the big benefit there. When your body uses more muscle in one go, we have seen, and I'm not sure that we know, I don't know why at least, we're not 100% sure why, but we do see an increase in those anabolic hormones that we are, such a big fan of producing. Power training, focusing on explosive movements can be a really effective way to also burn lots of calories. So training that emphasizes eccentric lengthening and then rapid concentric shortening can be really helpful. When we're doing stuff that's very explosive, your heart rate spikes like crazy. Think about the last time if you did like jumping jacks or squat jumps or, something explosive, even just like sprinting is a good example. That explosive stuff is definitely a big calorie burn, right? So a dumbbell push press, which is, right here, a little bit, very explosive. Mute that real quick. You can see, right, he dips down and then he drives that up, right? Dip, drive. That's a really good way to kind of, be a little bit explosive. It's not a compound movement, but it is a really good calorie burn, right? God, then we got the medicine ball wall balls, right? That's always a really good one too. Doing that's kind of a compound movement and explosive. So we love that, right? This is kind of like a squat to press, but it's very explosive, right? So she's got this big heavy medicine ball and she's going to squat and throw it up, bounce it off the wall and get it back down. Really great, right? That's a really big explosive. You want to get your heart rate up. That's a great way to do it. And then kettlebell swings. Kettlebell swings are also a really great exercise that burns a lot of calories and is very explosive. Good Lord. Skipped right to the bad stuff. Give me the good stuff. There we go. Right. So yeah, super effective way to burn body fat because again, it works lots of muscles simultaneously. It also targets your type 2 muscle fibers, which tends to result in a larger caloric burn because of how explosive these are. Your body is going to activate as many myofibrils as possible in as short of a time as possible. So it's going to be very, big calories there. But here's the thing. we shouldn't do power training. You guys will remember when we were meeting up, there was a big asterisk next to all the power stuff. I was like, look, this is a great way to burn calories, but there was an asterisk next to all of them. And that asterisk was indicating like, you should not do power training unless your client has demonstrated that they have, proper joint mobility, proper length tension relationships, core strength. We got to make sure that like it is safe for them to do these exercises. If it's not safe, it's not worth doing. So before they ever engage in that power stuff, they should definitely move through stabilization and strength. And that's why we're getting to that stuff, later today. Another thing that we can do is we can focus on circuit training. So circuit training is a series of exercises performed back to back with little to no rest or as little rest as possible in between, right? So this is just me. I put this up here. I got a couple examples of, here's a stabilization style circuit training block that you could put together, right? If you had a client do a push-up, let's say they're going to do 15 reps of each of these, right? So they do 15 push-ups, 15 single leg bent over rows. So now they've done their chest, they've done their back, a single leg shoulder press, they've done their shoulder, and then a Bosu ball squat where they're getting their legs at the end. And then they take 60 seconds of rest. So chest, back, shoulders, and then legs take 60 seconds of rest. Now imagine if we did that for, we did a version of that couple times, right? Great way to burn a substantial amount of calories. Then next month, we decide to do exactly the same thing. We decide to keep it totally exactly the same, right? But this time, it is a strength version of everything. So instead of a push-up, it becomes a chest press. Instead of a single leg bent over row, it becomes a bent over barbell row, which is much more stable. Instead of a single leg shoulder press, it's a military press. Instead of a Bosu ball squat, it's a barbell front squat, right? So now we've done like strength versions of everything. Is it better than the first circuit? No, I don't think it works that way, right? It's just more appropriate depending on what the client is. Stabilization stuff, their time under tension is going to be much longer. So you're going to get a really good calorie burn from that. But the strength stuff is going to target type 2 muscle fibers, which means a greater amount of EPOC later in the day. So which is better? That doesn't work that way, right? They're both very good in their own ways. Same thing is true about these about our power side, right? So if we did a medicine ball chest pass instead of a chest press, if we did a medicine ball slam instead of a row, a wall ball instead of a shoulder a military press, and then squat jumps, right? So all of those are really good examples. And so our client would just move from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and then they would take 60 seconds of rest. So this is really great because it is incorporating cardiorespiratory training at the same time that you are getting your strength training in, which is very efficient. If I've got a client who can only work out 3 days a week, I'm probably going to focus on circuit training. I'm like, okay, well, can you do cardio on your off days? And they're like, no. It's like, all right, circuit training it is. That's a great way to ensure that we're keeping the cardiovascular system healthy, while also ensuring that we're building as much muscle as we can. So big fan of circuit training, especially in the realm of weight loss. When I used to do boot camping, it was always just lots and lots of circuit training. So then we've got, this is kind of a fun one, metabolic resistance training. So this is where NASM kind of meets CrossFit a little bit. So metabolic resistance training is kind of it's just a term that encompasses all the stuff. It's like, what if you throw your reps in a weird scheme like this? It's like, all right, we don't know that doesn't fit within the OPT model, but it still might be an effective way to burn calories. So we have to have a term for it. We call it metabolic resistance training. So this is going to define any workout that involves a really high work rate type activity. So that's an exercise. This is my definition here. Exercises that have a super high repetition count, coupled with little to no rest. These are really fun a lot of times, and they can, give you like a really tough mental challenge. This can be a really kind of fun way to work out. It's not as specific. It's not the best way to gain strength, but it is just in terms of calories, a terrific way to burn a lot of calories. So here's a couple of fun variations of that. You could do what is called multi-planar sets. So multi-planar sets is where you pick multiple sets that build your training volume by moving through multiple planes of motion. So like you might do, like let's go with our example right here, right? We've got a push up into a single leg. Actually, we'll go. Yeah, we'll go with this one. So let's say we do a push-up, right? So your first set, we very much focus on, it's kind of a sagittal thing, right? We focus on like tricep push-ups, right? Where they're doing like military push-ups. So it's a very sagittal type of push-up. Then our next set, we go with a really wide stance where the elbows flare out instead. So now it's a lot more of a frontal style push-up, right? And then maybe we can do a push-up where we alternate, moving back and forth like this. So we go out to the side like that and then take it down. Sometimes I like to call those clock push-ups. Clock push-ups is where, I will do a push-up here and then I go to 12 o'clock, 1, 2, 3, and kind of work my way around, then do the other arm. Kind of a fun, boot campy, weird variation on the push-up. So then we're getting a little bit of like movement. I guess I could have gone with a much better transverse version. You know what? We'll do a T push-up. So we'll do a push-up and then we'll reach into a T. That's a better example of transverse. So that's a really good way to work through all 3 planes of motion. That's why it's multi-planar. Then my next set, let's say I'm doing a single leg bent over row. Again, I could go with a really neutral grip on my first set, a wide grip on my second set, and then I could go with like maybe twisting for my third, right? Get a little transverse action in there. I could do a, neutral shoulder press, a wide shoulder press, and then I could do like an Arnold press, right? This was like Arnold Schwarzenegger's favorite shoulder exercise. And then I could do a front squat, which is, I'm sorry, I could do a Bosu ball squat. I could do a sumo squat, which is, kind of a little more frontal. And then honestly, there's not like a transverse squat version, but maybe I could do like a curtsy lunge or something where, I drop one leg back into a lunge that kind of looks like this, curtsy lunge. So instead of like, saying sagittal, we go there. Or maybe I just not do squats. Maybe I do lunges, lateral lunges, curtsy lunges, right? So that's multi-planar sets. And it can be kind of a fun thing to throw in at your clients. Also a really good way to teach people how to do stuff. And it's a great way to ensure that you are training multi-planar. We're not just making sure that our client can walk straight frontwards and backwards, we're making sure they can move side to side. We're making sure they can twist. We've also got what are called cluster sets. Cluster sets are kind of fun. Cluster sets are where you will actually do basically as many reps as possible. So cluster sets are kind of broken down. Yeah, they'll sometimes hear them referred to as broken down into like mini sets is what they were saying here. But basically you end up doing a super high amount of repetitions where let's say you pick a certain number of repetitions, right? We'll see. Let's see here. Cluster set CrossFit. Den at home. Okay, what's this? Okay, so that's kind of an interesting version. All right, so in this version, they're doing whatever this is. It's single. Oh, they're calling it clusters. What is that exercise? I don't even know what that is. Okay, whatever. Anyway, let's get out of here, CrossFit. So a cluster set might be something like, let's say you want to get 100 reps of something. Okay. If you want to do that, you would say, okay, well, I'm going to do as many of these repetitions as possible in my first set. Then I'm going to rest however much time I need, and I'm going to pick it up and keep going. So let's say you're trying to do 100 push-ups. I can't do 100 push-ups in a row, but I might be able to do, let's say I do 35 push-ups, and then I'm like, God, and I'm exhausted, right? I take maybe 60 seconds of rest, 30 seconds of rest, whatever, and I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to try to get through to 100 as fast as I can. There's actually a really fun BuzzFeed guy who has done this. This guy wanted to do 100 pull-ups. BuzzFeed 100 pull-ups. And this is like kind of a fun thing. He did 100 pull-ups every day for 30 days. Okay. And he could probably only do, like when he first started, he could only do maybe like 6 or 7 at a time, right? So every day he would do as many. So, if he's doing like 6 in his first set, but then he's going to get exhausted, right? It gets down to where maybe he's doing like 1 at a time. It might take him 15, 20 sets to finish getting through this routine. That's what cluster sets are. It's kind of a fun approach to the training environment. And then there are also what are called simple to complex sets. So simple to complex sets are where you progressively perform a much more advanced version of an exercise, and you are building complexity throughout the set. So it might start with being like, all right, we are going to do a ball squat, right, for your first set. Okay. And it's like, okay, there's the ball squat. Then we do a ball squat to biceps curl for set number 2. So now they're going to do a ball squat where then they also do a bicep curl. And then we're going to do a ball squat curl to shoulder press, right? So you're going to squat, curl, and then press. And that's kind of a fun approach too, right? A little bit of a different take on things. So maybe you go with, a regular push-up. Then you go with a push-up with a shoulder tap. Then you go with a push-up with a shoulder tap with a T-plank. There's a lot of different fun variations that you can throw around out there, and it just gets more complicated. There's an exercise called an around the world. And it's a burpee variation. So here's what an around the world burpee kind of looks like. Nope, no, it's not. Okay, lady. God dang it. This is the problem. No, like when it's not like official names, this is why I always use the official names for exercises, because like everybody has like a different take on what stuff is called. So you will do a burpee. That's your first rep. Then you will do a burpee where you will come up. You do like a burpee with no push-up. Then you do a burpee with a push-up. Then you do a burpee where you come up and you do like a squat jump at the end of it. Then you do a burpee with a squat jump. And then once you're done with the squat jump, you go into a front lunge. Burpee, squat jump, front lunge, jump into a pull-up. And it's like a whole freaking thing. It just gets bigger and longer and more complicated. That's a simple to complex set. It's kind of a fun way to approach things. So,
what is a BOSU ball, and what is epoch stand for again, please?
So a BOSU ball is this little piece of equipment right here. It's the little half ball with the hard plastic top that you can stand on. It just makes things really wobbly. So we use it in like the stabilization set. I mean, that's crazy, right?
Okay.
That's really unstable. And then epoch is the extra calorie burn that you get after exercising, right? You burn more calories when you're done exercising. excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, EPOC, right? You burn oxygen while you're working out, obviously. You burn more oxygen afterwards in order to catch up. So what did somebody put it some way? Someone put, they said it's like the extra money, you know, it's how you save extra money, and you're really aggressive about not spending money after you go on vacation. Because you spend so much money during vacation, you're trying to make up for it when you get back. I was like, man, that's a good analogy. So general cardiorespiratory training guidelines here that we have got. So now, okay, should we do multiplanar sets? Should we do cluster sets? Should we do simple to complex? Well, who knows? You know, it depends on the client. It depends on, like, you know, how they're responding, what their goals are, you know, if they're capable of doing things. I mean, some of those things are freaking hard, you know? So, I mean, they're good for calorie burns, but you know, if your client's trying to build muscle, is it the best way in the world to build muscle with like a multiplanar set? I don't know, maybe, but you're kind of using different muscles each time, so you're not really getting a lot of training volume, which we know volume is associated with hypertrophy. You know, we're going to experience growth when we do, you know, consistent work on a muscle. So maybe it's not the best way to do it. You know, if we do a simple to complex set, it's like they're only doing the complex stuff at the very end. They did the simple stuff and the medium stuff, you know, in the sets leading up to it. So is it the best way? Again, it depends on what your client's goals are, but it is a great calorie burn. So if we are just looking at it from the aspect of like how many calories it burns, yeah, it's a really effective way to you know, burn lots of energy. So when we're considering like how to burn lots of energy, this is where we come to those cardiorespiratory fit principles. You know, we've talked about these plenty of times, but your fit principles, FITT, and then NASM likes to have an E there as well, is a tool that's used to describe the different variables within an effective cardio program. So you are considering like what your cardio's program's frequency is, what its intensity is, what's the amount of time it is, type, and enjoyment. Again, if I've got a client who can only exercise 3 days per week, well, there's my frequency, right? 3 days per week. Since that's not a super high frequency, I can be a little bit more intense. So the demand of that exercise in response to 3 days per week is going to be a little bit higher. The length of time is going to be, you know, represented with my intensity. So if I'm doing high intensity, my duration's not going to be very long. The type is the mode. Maybe I decide to stick to dumbbells in circuit training. Maybe I decide to do like, you know, a Bosu ball squat circuit, you know, or body weight circuit, or, you know, maybe it's like getting on the treadmill. And then the enjoyment factor, the level of pleasure. I will say this, the metabolic resistance stuff, it's fun. You know, this is why CrossFit's so popular, you know. Is it the best way to gain strength? Again, I don't really think so, but it is super fun and it will keep people in the gym consistently. And that is a great way to gain muscle. So in general, when it comes to like your time, if we look at like how intensity and time are sort of associated with each other, right? We try to aim for about 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity per week, or 75 minutes of high intensity activity per week. So that means going for a 30-minute walk or maybe a 15-minute run. Both of those could be, you know, 5 days a week. Both those could be a really effective way to ensure that you're just keeping your calorie burn consistently high, right? And that's what we're going for, you know. Like I said, like I just had a little bit of extra energy yesterday. I decided to go for a short little 2.5 mile run, you know, 20 minutes. If I did that 3 or 4 times a week, I'm starting to get pretty close to my, you know, minimum activity level per week. That could be an effective way to ensure that I'm keeping my heart healthy and, you know, keeping my body moving. And, you know, of course, I'm coupling that with all my strength training, but you know, that's what we're looking at. That's how we're analyzing it. You know, just try to get active for the right amount of time per week. Lorianne, that's kind of what we were talking about the other day, right? We were talking about like getting yourself up to where you can walk consistently at like a moderate pace for 30 uninterrupted minutes. And once we can do like 5 days of that in a row, it's like, all right, now let's start getting into a little bit more of the strength training stuff. And that's where it's like we know we have a goodly amount of endurance at that point. And then once we have that endurance, it's like, all right, well, now we start focusing on walking faster. Like now we make it more intense. So when it comes to cardio, there's a lot of different approaches out there. Like resistance training, we get a lot of different options. Dumbbells, barbells, and things like that. But with cardio, there's a couple different versions. There's steady state cardio, which is probably what most people, that's what I did yesterday. I went for a run, right? Steady state cardio is bouts of sustained, steady state or fixed intensity aerobic exercise. Yesterday I went for a run. I was averaging what was it, a 6.5 minute mile, I think is what it was. Or maybe it was closer to 7. It was a light jog. I wasn't like pushing myself super hard, but I was trying to, I had so much time, so I was trying to get through it. And it was all flat, so it's easy. That's very much steady state. Like you're not, you may push. I mean, you can push yourself, but you're basically picking like a rate and you're staying at it. If I got a treadmill, put it at 7.0 and started running, great. I'd be doing 7 miles an hour, consistent. Right. And I would just stay that way. It works, it's not bad. There's also aerobic interval training, which is where you start to differentiate between like 2 different intensity levels. So this differs from traditional anaerobic interval training in that it uses longer, more moderate aerobic work intervals. So think of aerobic interval training as medium intensity interval training instead of high intensity interval training. HIIT training, high intensity interval training, brings you anaerobic. It brings you using, you end up using so much muscle that you get out of breath, right? Aerobic interval training is a little bit different. So anaerobic interval training is going to be a higher level of intensity with a higher level of rest. Aerobic interval training is a moderate level of intensity with moderate rest. And steady state cardio is low intensity, no rest. So maybe walking on the treadmill for 20 minutes would be steady state cardio. Whereas aerobic interval training would be maybe doing like a 1-to-1 ratio. Maybe I do 1 minute of jogging, 1 minute of recovery, or maybe like 1 minute of jogging with 30 seconds of recovery. I'm keeping the rest periods very short, which ensures that like my intensity can't climb too high. This is where you'll see this is kind of like what works really well with like a zone 2, zone 1 style of workout. Zone 2 is intense, but it's not super intense. Zone 3 is like you're getting out of breath, right? So if you are fluctuating between, let's say 80% of your max heart rate and 70% of your max heart rate, 70% is your steady state pace, and 80% is your moderate interval pace. Then let's say we take it all the way up to 90% of your max heart rate, right? That's your anaerobic interval training where we use much higher intensities. This involves shorter, much more intense bouts of exercise. Something, 90 seconds is about as long as it's going to go. And if you're getting 90 seconds of like high intensity, that means you are great at cardio. Most people, they're going to keep it to 30 seconds or shorter, and this is going to be like a 1-to-2 work to rest ratio, or maybe even a 1-to-3 work to ratio, or a 1-to-5 work to rest ratio. That is, huge. Like if I did 30 seconds of sprinting as hard as I can, and then I jogged to recover for 2.5 minutes, that's a 1-to-5 work to rest ratio. 30 seconds of work, 2.5 minutes of rest. And we love it. Anaerobic interval training is great. This is one of the best ways to really generate a lot of that EPOC. You end up using so much energy in this short little bout, it makes your body like have to catch up later. And this is, where interval training has become so popular in the last few years. We've got multi-mode training, which is a little bit of a different approach. Now, these actually, you know, multi-mode training is not necessarily the difference between like the types of intervals. Instead, multi-mode training is just using different modalities within one session. I used to do a workout at BLR that I called the cardio sampler. And it was like where I would set up a strength training circuit of 8 exercises, and you had to do those 8 exercises, and then you had to go and do, and it was a 1/4 mile run on the treadmill, a 1/2 mile on the elliptical, a 1/4 mile on the rowing machine, and 1 mile on the spin bike. And so you would do the treadmill, and then go do the 8 exercise circuit. Then you would do the elliptical, then do the 8 exercise circuit, and you would alternate back and forth. And we would use multiple pieces of equipment. That's an example of multi-mode training, and it was a fun thing, and people loved it. And I was like, hey, here's the thing. If you get done with this workout in 60 minutes, great. If you get done with it in 40 minutes, even greater. You get to go home earlier, you know? Like, so people were like rewarded for working a little bit harder. It was kind of a fun, you know, little workout that was optional. Lorianne, do you have a question?
No.
Oh, no, you're good. So yeah, so that was multi-mode training. Also at where I used to work, we also used to do stepwise training, or sometimes is referred to as pyramid training. So remember pyramid sets when it comes to like strength training, right? That's where you do like either progressively heavier sets or progressively lighter sets. You know, your first set might be, let's say 12 repetitions with 100 pounds. And then you're going to do 10 repetitions with 110 pounds. And then 8 repetitions with 120 pounds, you know, like making adjustments there. That is pyramid sets. Well, pyramid training can also exist in the realm of cardio. Maybe you are incrementally increasing things. We used to do a cardio class. It was called Mountain, and it was where basically you would climb little mini mountains. And so like we would go up in intensity for 8 straight minutes. You know, so you'd have like low intensity, and then you would raise it by 1 mile per hour or whatever, 1/2 mile per hour, whatever is appropriate for you, or maybe you just raise the incline, and we would go up and up and up and up and up. And so like, or, you know, you could keep the speed the same and the incline would increase every minute on the minute for 8 minutes until eventually you're just going uphill and you're like, and you're completely exhausted, right? Then you reset, you get to recover as you climb that mountain again. So it kind of simulates like going up and downhill. That's stepwise training. And then there's mixed tempo training, AKA fartlek training, which is my favorite word in the world. Fartlek, which is a Swedish word that means speed play. It involves mixing different tempos. So maybe you do 30 seconds of sprinting, and then you do a 30-second recovery. Then you do 60 seconds of sprinting, 60 seconds of recovery, 90 seconds of sprinting, 90 seconds of recovery, rinse and repeat. 30, 30, 60, 60, 90, 90. Or, you know, 30, 30, 45, 45, 60, 60. All of those are good. The original version, the original fartlek, was for marathoners. And it was where they would do a 400-meter sprint, 400-meter recovery, 800 meters, or 600-meter sprint, 600 recovery, 800, 800, and then back to 600, then back to 600. Then it would reset. So 4, 4. So 4, 4, 6, 6, 8, 8, 6, 6. 4, 4, 6, 6, 8, 8, 6, 6. And they would just do that. And if it was like, you know, they would do that for X number of miles. So like maybe the first week they was like, all right, you got to do, you know, it's marathoning, right? So it's like you're gonna do 10 miles today, and they would do 10 miles of that. And then they would do 12 miles the next week. And they noticed that people's times, their training splits, their how fast they were running was improving because it was really improving their running economy. So it's a Swedish word for speed play, and it's a very, very, very effective method. If you're trying to improve your cardio in particular, I'm a big fan of fartlek training. For those of you who might be interested in getting into like competitive running. Then we got split routines. Split routines is where you break your cardio session into multiple bouts throughout the day, rather than one big cardio session. Maybe you don't have time to go to the gym for a full 60 minutes, but if you can get a little bit of strength training in the beginning of the day, maybe at home by doing some body weight exercises, and then you can go on like a 30-minute walk later in the day, you're getting your 60 minutes in per day. That's great. Or maybe you just go for 3 little 10-minute bouts of of walking throughout the day. Here's the dirty little secret. It feels like you burn more calories if you do like a full hour, but honestly, it burns the exact same number of calories. 3 10-minute sessions burns exactly the same number of calories as one 30-minute session. Identical. So that's kind of fun. So which one's best? Again,
but what about EPOC on that, since it's not intensity?
That's what's kind of fun, right? Here's the thing. It could be intense though. You get 10 minutes, like if you did 10 minutes, like what if you did, let's say we're trying to get 30 minutes a day, right? Let's say you did 4 Tabatas. Remember the Tabatas, that 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off thing times 8. So it takes exactly 4 minutes. So if you did that 4 times, that's 24 minutes. Sorry. Sorry, you're going to do it 5 times in a day. So let's say you did that Tabata. Tabatas are pretty intense. If you did like jumping jacks for 20 seconds, rest for 10 seconds, jumping jacks for 20 seconds, rest for 10 seconds. If you did that and you did it in the morning, and then, you shower, have breakfast, get to work, do another one for 4 minutes. And then during your lunch break, you do another one. And then before you leave work, you do another one. And then you do another one before you go to bed. There's your 5, right? So 4, 8, 12, 16, that's 20 minutes of work, right? Overall. So 20 minutes, not too bad, right? 5 days a week, that's going to be 100 minutes of exercise, and it's high intensity. So you're above that 75 threshold. Now, in terms of EPOC, which is what you're asking, here's the thing. You kind of reset your EPOC counter every time you do it. So chances are your EPOC levels will actually be pretty elevated compared to someone who did it in, let's say at 8 a.m. and then they're waiting all the way until 8 a.m. the next day. You might have actually more EPOC. You might actually burn more calories that way through EPOC. But in terms of calories burned, like during the workout, they would be identical. But the extra calories could theoretically be bonus. I'd have to look into that, but it makes perfect sense to me that it would work that way. Okay. So obviously all of this, doesn't matter if it's cardio, doesn't matter if it's strength training, doesn't matter if it's flexibility, is going to require progression in order to see improvements. You are needing to progress your clients through systematic progressions, that principle of overload or progressive overload, right? And there's different ways to do it. There's linear periodization, if we look at like linear periodization improvements, it looks something kind of like this. Let's say they are doing week 1, they're doing 8 reps of 100 pounds. And then week 2, they do 8 reps of 110 pounds, 120, 130, 140, right? And so it is, and that's 8 reps, until eventually it's like, okay, well, now they've progressed so much strength. It's like, we got to lower the reps down. So then we go 140 at 5 reps, 5, 5, 5. And then we drop it down even lower. We go into like 3 reps, 3, 3, 3. So we're increasing the weight by 25% every single week on their squat there. And then we go back to that 8 at the end, and it's going to be a lot heavier than it was initially. So now, like when we reset, it'll probably be like closer to 140 pounds or something like that, right? And then we look for that improvement. So that's linear periodization. You would make things harder by your first week being this much weight. You would go up with the weight next week, even if that involves dropping the reps. Then you would go up with the weight again, even if it involves dropping the reps, but you are teaching your body to lift heavier. Then 3-4 weeks later, whatever, however long you are setting up your block, you would go and reset, and you would start going back to that high number of repetitions with a heavier weight. That's linear periodization. You're progressing in a straight line, basically. But then there's also what's kind of a fun one. It's called double progression. Double progression is kind of fun, where let's say you give your client a range of reps to hit. Let's say, I was like, hey, I want you to do bicep curls with 10 pounds, and I want you to do somewhere between 12 and 15 reps for 3 sets, right? So then what happens is the first week, let's say that 12 reps is hard enough, and they're like, let's say they're aiming between 12 and 15. So they're able to get like 13 reps for set number 1, 12 reps for set number 2, 12 sets for set number 3. Great. That was well within the range. That's what we're aiming for. 13, 12, 12. And then next time they work out, later that week or something, they do the same thing. Only this time they get 14 reps the first time, 13 reps the second time, and 12 reps the third time. So we saw some improvements there. And then next week, we come back and we do the same thing. They get 15 reps on the first set, 14 on the second set, 13 on the third. All right, like reps are going up. The weight's staying the same. It's still 10 pounds, but they're building their endurance. Until eventually it's like 15 reps in set 1, 15 reps in set 2, 15 reps in set 3. Well, now they can get through all 3 sets at the highest rep scheme. So we go up to 12-pound dumbbells and we make it harder and we progress that way. So both of those are ways to progress that are really effective. I like to have a blend of that. My routine this morning, for instance, was heavy sets for my first like 4 exercises, and then lighter sets with double progression of higher repetitions with like a gap, like a range of this many reps to that many reps. And next week, all my weights are going to go up for the heavy movements, and all my weights will stay the same for the light movements, unless I can get through all 3 sets at the highest repetitions that I picked. And that's double progression. That's kind of a fun way to do it. And there's so many different ways to progress, guys. You don't have to always go up with weight and things like that. You could also like increase the instability, right? You could make somebody progress by standing on one leg, or standing on a Bosu ball, or standing on a squishy pad. Any of those things is another way to make it harder. It's like, yeah, you're killing it. Let's make it tougher by doing this version. It just depends on what your client is focused on. If they're in stabilization, yeah, you should be progressing things by making it more unstable every set, or every week. If your client is in strength, yeah, make it heavier. And if they're in power, make them either heavier or more explosive. So progression is going to be important. Initial programs, you want to progress pretty slowly, guys. Don't go crazy on new clients. However, new clients will adapt really quickly because their nervous system is going to figure out how to get better at stuff really fast. And so they will see pretty drastic improvements early on compared with the type of progress that we see to somebody who has, been lifting consistently for a few years. So let's take a look at how to incorporate the OPT model. So NASM's OPT model, I'm going to pull up the new version here. I mean, it's the same, but they just slightly retooled the names. Here's our OPT model, right? We've got phase 1, which is the stabilization endurance. We got 3 different levels here: stabilization, strength, and power. And these are going to be sort of the 3 primary categories and 3 primary goals that our clients have. But there are sort of different versions of strength. So we can see that some of it is strength endurance, some of it is focused on muscle development or hypertrophy, and some of it is based on maximal strength. So just raw strength gains. Cool. All right, there we go. We got a couple different, things to kind of focus on. This is a very integrated approach. This is making sure that like we don't just have someone who can lift heavy but has no endurance. This makes sure that we have someone who can, isn't just explosive, but they also have really good stability, right? This is the idea of what we and NASM likes to call an integrated training approach. It incorporates all of the parts of an effective training program as a progressive system in multiple planes of motion. So we are focusing not only on just heading to the gym and lifting big heavy weights the whole time, we are focused on developing their flexibility, their core strength, their balance, their ability to do plyometrics and ankle proprioception, their speed, agility, and quickness. And then there's resistance training, obviously, like working, the shoulders, the chest, the back, the biceps, the triceps, the legs. And we are incorporating cardio. So the stabilization level is focusing on the adaptation of stabilization. The whole point of the stabilization level is to focus on developing proper movement patterns and proper joint stability so that our clients move the way that they are intended to move, right? That's what we are seeing here. So this phase of training, or this level of training, only consists of one phase. So within the stabilization level, and this, by the way, the levels indicate your exercise selection. So when you pick an exercise, you are going to pick a stabilization version of that exercise, something that is, wobbly, right? It's unstable. And within that phase, we have the stabilization endurance phase here, right? And so that's going to look like this, right? The stabilization endurance phase focuses on creating optimum levels of stabilization and optimum levels of postural control. What does that mean? Well, the exercises that we pick are going to be usually multi-planar. So we're going to use multiple planes of motion. Most strength movements, guys, they use one plane of motion consistently for X number of weeks. Think about like the classic strength training program. They literally call it starting strength. Starting strength is this really classic, workout program. And it looks like this. This is the whole workout. Squat, bench press, deadlift, squat, overhead press, power clean, squat, bench press, deadlift. And you just switch it next week. So it's literally squats, benches, deadlifting, overhead press, and clean. 5 exercises. That's it. And sometimes you'll even see, instead of the power clean, you'll see that swapped out for a bent over row. So that's really basic, right? We didn't have lateral lunges in there. We didn't have, chest flies in there. That's, very transverse. It's all very much focused on just kind of staying in one plane of training. It's great for strength. It's not great for stabilization. If we're trying to teach our clients how to move their body in all of the ways that it can move, we need to be multi-planar. And we also need to use proprioceptively enriched environments. It's a very fancy way of saying unstable, wobbly environments. Just make sure that your client is picking an unstable version, right? Here's a military press. Very, very stable exercise. You're using a bar, which means, it's very evenly distributing the weight, and you are pressing straight up overhead. Cool, love it. But there is also the single leg shoulder press. This is an unstable version, right? Now he has to use his shoulders, but he also has to balance, right? And then here's a single arm, single leg shoulder press. That's even more unstable because now she's only weighting one side, so she wants to tip this way. That's a great way to work on stabilization. So when we look at the exercise selection, you will notice that it is very unstable exercises. Strength goals, the strength level, our primary adaptation, our primary focus is, force production. If we look at all three of the strength level phases, right? Endurance, hypertrophy, and max strength, all of this is still about increased force production. This is an increased like high duration force production. This is force production that results in like big muscles. And this is just literally raw force production. So within the strength level, the focus is on, strength. Shocker. Definitely a higher amount of volume here because we are going to do a lower number of reps, but we are going to lift at a much higher intensity. This is really great because it increases the metabolic demand using different energy systems, right? We're focusing more on glycolysis and the ATP-PC system, which both of those systems are associated with, increased like calorie burns, aerobic steady state cardio. Well, that's a little bit more, yeah, it's a consistent calorie burn, but the calories burned per hour is a little bit lower, because we're just not using as much stuff. The more stuff you use, the more energy you're going to burn. The heavier you lift, the more stuff you're going to use. So this is all about increasing motor unit recruitment, how fast those motor units fire, and motor unit synchronization. That is absolutely huge when it comes to gaining strength. So we like the strength level for our weight loss clients. And there's a couple different versions of them. There's phase 2, strength endurance. This type of strength is the focus is on improving stabilization even further than we did last time, but also while increasing force production. And so when we're doing strength endurance, guys, we're going to use a superset technique, and we're going to pair a strength movement with a stabilization movement. Okay, so the strength movement is going to address our force production, and the stabilization movement is going to address our instability. So if we, again, have like a military press, and let's say we did 8 really heavy reps of that, and then we pair it up, we set that barbell down and immediately go into a single leg shoulder press for, let's say, 12 repetitions, right? It's like, man, you just did 20 repetitions for your shoulders. Half of it was heavy and half of it was light, but the light stuff was like unstable. So it's like, it feels like if you've ever done like a drop set. Drop setting is where, yeah, it looks like this. It's where you'll basically, like, let's say you do a set at 70 pounds here. You do as many reps as you can, and then you can't do any more. And so then you lower the weight down to 25 and you keep going for as many as you can. And then maybe you could drop it down to 10 and keep going for as many as you can. And it's just a really great way to like burn a lot of freaking energy in a short period of time. That's drop setting, but the strength endurance supersets will feel like drop setting because you're going to go really heavy and then you're going to keep going with that light weight. Great way to build endurance, terrific way to build endurance. Clients who are in hypertrophy, well, this is sort of really the goal here is we're just doing all of the things that result in maximum muscle damage. We're just trying to create as much cellular damage as possible so that it will result in as much cellular growth as possible. So hypertrophy is like really high levels of volume to create these big cellular changes, right? I put this in here. It's your gains with a Z, it's like every guy in the gym is like, I want my gains, really high volume of training here. And so it's just strength movements by itself. And it's really in the middle of the whole OPT model. Like, would you consider hypertrophy heavy? Kind of. It's heavier than strength endurance, certainly heavier than stabilization. Would you consider it high repetitions? Yeah, it's definitely higher repetitions than max strength. It's definitely higher repetitions than power. So it's kind of right in the middle. It's the jack of all trades, master of none of the OPT model, But the rest of that phrase, by the way, is but that it's better than master of none. People always forget the second half of that phrase. People sometimes say it's like jack of all trades. They use it as like a negative thing. They're like, you're a jack of all trades, but you're a master of none. That's like, yeah, that's better than master of none. Or better than master of one. Sorry, that's the end of the phrase. Then we got the max strength side of things, right? Max strength is developing maximal muscle tension, raw force production. It's like, hey, how much can you lift? Can you lift more than that? You know, like that's max strength. So we are using maximal intensities that is going to result in maximal muscle and motor recruitment, maximum firing rate, maximum synchronization, all of these things that result in pure raw strength. How many reps are you going to do? At the very most 5. If you're doing 6 reps, it's too light. Go heavier. You know, that's the real max strength side of things. And then we got the power level. The power level is all about increased force production, right? We're trying to get things as heavy as possible while also making them relatively explosive. So if the strength phase was all about force production, the power phase is all about rate of force production, right? So now it's like, okay, let's recruit that heavy, you know, because we've all done, you know, if you've ever done like maximum strength lifting where you're like, you know, and it's like, oh, I got it, you know, like, and it's kind of slow. Power is like same amount of weight, but much more explosively, right? So this only consists of one phase of training, and which is also called power. And the power phase of training looks like this, right? It's going to focus on developing even further that motor unit recruitment, which is explosive, that firing rate, which makes something explosive, the synchronization, which makes it explosive. So when we're looking at power, it's an equation of force, which we get from maximum strength, and velocity, which we get from maximum speed. So this is also going to use superset techniques, and we're going to do a big, heavy, you know, strength movement, something like a military press, and then we're going to pair that with a lighter, much more explosive movement, like a you know, a dumbbell shoulder press, and we're going to do like a push press, and we're going to do really explosively. Sometimes you will hear these referred to as cluster set, or not cluster sets, contrast sets. By the way, you'll hear that phrase. NASM doesn't use that phrase, but some people do. So when it comes to weight loss, again, power is pretty great. But here's the thing. If we have a really obese client, should you be doing max strength? Should you be doing power? Maybe if it's appropriate for them. But remember, like, this is very high impact stuff. So, you know, and they already have a very, very heavy body. So maximum strength training is not one of the safest phases for obese clientele. So if you're going to do like power training, if you want to just do the velocity side of things and just do the explosive stuff minus the strength superset technique, you can do that. And that's still an effective way to burn lots of calories, to recruit type 2 muscle fibers. You know, just focus on the velocity side of things. And, you know, focusing on the velocity side of things still does improve your power. You know, it's half the equation. It's just not, if you really are truly going for maximum power increase, you want to address both sides of the equation, the force side and the velocity side. So heavy barbell squat and a squat jump. But if you can't do the heavy barbell squat and you just do the squat jump, guess what? That's still going to improve your power. Any questions on the OPT model before we move into the OPT approach to cardio? You guys feeling good? I guess, I mean, everybody in here, you guys have seen this a couple times now. Bay, this is your 3rd time. You guys feel like experts yet?
No, I don't. I'm just like keeping up with the notes. You're like, blah, 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 you got it down. And I'm like, just trying to keep up.
Okay. Well, questions help. If you need clarification, like, ask me a question.
Okay.
All right. Let's take a look at our different stages of training, right? This is what we do when we use cardio. So we've got levels that's used for our exercise selection. Do you choose a barbell? Do you choose a dumbbell? Do you choose a single leg exercise? Do you do a double leg exercise? Right? That's what we use levels for. We got phases, which chooses our repetition schemes and our intensities and our tempos and things like that. And then on the cardio side of things, we've got stages and zones. So stages are going to be different types of cardio that we're going to do over different lengths of time. So stage training is a cardiovascular system that uses different heart rate zones in order to target different types of metabolism. So it's a very similar structure to the OPT model. If we think about having the power level, the strength level, and the stabilization level, well, if we look at cardio here, you will notice we've got this kind of broken down into stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Stage 1 is going to be your steady state cardio, right? We're going to keep it relatively simple here. You are just going to use zone 1. That's the only thing that exists in there, right? 65 to 75% of your heart rate max, or you could say it's a 12 to 13 on the RPE scale. Or you could consider this like a walk or a jog, right? That's a really good example of, a stage 1 or zone 1 cardio workout. It's like step 1, start jogging. Get your heart rate to 70% of your heart rate max. Don't stop for the next 20 minutes. There you go, right? Pretty basic. Then, this is what that looks like, right? So, we would warm up below zone 1 for about 5 to 10 minutes. And then we stay in zone 1 here for about 30 to 60 minutes. And then we cool down for 5 to 10 minutes. Cool, piece of cake, right? Stage 2 cardio routines is where we start to introduce interval training, right? We get a little bit more complex about it. So now with stage 2 side of things, we're looking at 76 to 85% of your heart rate max. If we go into zone 2, while we recover at zone 1, which was 65 to 75%. So now we're introducing a blend of zone 2 and zone 1. Zone 1 is going to be used for recovery, and zone 2 is going to be used for our high intensity, right? This is kind of like supersetting, right? It's almost like doing the strength movement paired with a stabilization movement in a way. So this is for intermediate clients who have built up a good cardiorespiratory base. When your client can complete 30 uninterrupted minutes at 75% of their heart rate max, that's when they are ready for zone 2. Or, you could always do a Rockport walk test or a 3-minute step test and see if they qualify that way. But I like the kind of holistic approach to it. Once my client gets to 30 minutes uninterrupted, that's when I know they're ready for zone 2. So this is where we incorporate that interval training, right? So we might start by warming up, below zone 1, just getting the blood pumping a little bit. And then we take ourselves up just above the lactate threshold. This is where you are producing more lactic acid than your body can process. So there's a little bit of lactic acid left over, and so it starts pooling and it causes your legs to burn and, maybe cause a little bit of nausea, like all that stuff that kind of comes along with it. And you start breathing like crazy to convert that lactic acid into energy. But we don't want to do that. We can't do that forever because eventually there will be so much lactic acid that you can't keep moving. Legs are burning too much. So now we need to recover. So we might do intervals like this. We do 1 minute above the lactate threshold, 3 minutes below it. So 1 minute at 76 to 85% of the heart rate max and 1 minute at 65 to 75%. So, think about that as like 1 minute at 80%, 3 minutes at 70%, and repeat for however many reps you're going to do. And that would be a really good stage 2 cardio routine. And then we've got stage 3, where we start to incorporate zone 3, 86 to 95% of the heart rate max. That's a 17 to 19 on the RPE scale. Remember, the RPE scale only goes up to 20. That is almost maximum intensity. This is your true sprinting. And now we're going to use zone 2 for recovery and zone 1 for recovery. So when we talk about like that high intensity interval training, this is what we're talking about, right? We're talking about driving that intensity up. So we're further increasing the workload, whether that's speed or incline or maybe level of resistance, and taking our client into an even higher heart rate. So it might look something kind of like this. You warm up below zone 1 for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, take yourself up into your lactate threshold zone 2 for, anywhere from about 2 minutes there. And then you drop up into zone 3 and maybe you recover in zone 2. Or if it's a client who just entered zone 3, they're probably going to recover in zone 1. Everybody's going to be a little bit different, but it's like, all right, I want you to get to, imagine that fartlek training we talked about earlier, right? Where, you are doing different intensities. It's like, okay, I want you to, let's say 65% of your heart rate is your base recovery zone. This is a really advanced, complicated routine. But let's say, if I'm going to type this out here. Let's say you do like an interesting like stage 3 fartlek training, right? It looks something like this. If you did 60 or 90 seconds in zone 1, and that's going to be, let's say, 65% heart rate max, okay? That's your recovery zone. So before that, we need to do sort of a little bit more of an intense version. So we do 90 seconds in zone 1 at 75% heart rate max. So now that's your first 3 minutes is spent 90 seconds at 75%. Then you recover just a little bit, right? We bring the intensity down just 10%, right? But then we're going to raise the intensity back up. We're going to go 60 seconds in zone 2, right? And let's say 80% heart rate max, right? Then you recover for 60 seconds back in zone 1 at that 65% heart rate max. Then we take it all the way up to, very high intensity, 30 seconds in zone 3, right? Where it's like we're really getting kind of intense here. We'll say 90% heart rate max. And then we do 30 seconds in zone 1 at 65% heart rate max. So it's like you go medium, or pretty, just like not very hard at all. And then you recover. And then you go medium hard and you recover. And then you go really hard and then you recover, right? That would be a zone 3 workout. The way I used to describe it to people is I would say, I want you to do, think of it as, your work intervals, you are trying to get out of breath. And you have 90 seconds to do it in the first set, and then you're going to recover for 90 seconds. You have 60 seconds to do it in your second set, and then you're going to recover for 60 seconds. And then you only got 30 seconds to get out of breath. So what do you have to do? What do you have to do to get out of breath in 30 seconds? How hard do you have to work? That will help you do that. And that's a like slightly different way of monitoring intensity. You could also just say, an RPE of this, an RPE of that. So we really like stage training. Stage training is a super effective tool in our weight loss tool belt. Simply increasing the intensity at the same type doesn't create consistent improvements. We need to work through different energy levels, different energy zones, different types of metabolism. It's important to have sort of a blend. So like, even if I had a client who was in a stage 3 routine, they're in great shape, and I have them doing 3 days of cardio, I would have a zone 1, I would have a stage 1 style day where they have just a long run and we leave it alone. And then I have a medium day, and then I have their high intensity day. And that is going to make sure that my client never plateaus because their body never gets used to doing one simple thing. You know, people are always like, I don't know, I go jogging all the time, but I just feel like I'm not getting any better at it. And it's like, yeah, well, you're jogging the same way every time. Find a way to make it tougher, you know, do that interval stuff. So by increasing your intensity and specifically working in stage 3, that's going to take greater advantage of that epoch. This is why interval training has been shown to be so effective for weight loss. When you do high intensity, you create higher levels of epoch. The harder you work in the gym, the more calories you will burn out of the gym. Which is why I always tell my clients, I'm like, you know, burning calories in the gym is good, but burning calories in bed is way better. You know, you can interpret that however. It's my favorite, you know, fake dirty joke. Circuit training also is a really great way to incorporate this. You know, you could, you know, have like a low intensity exercise as your recovery. You know, like let's say you do, you know, remember that, like look at that thruster with the dumbbells, right? That's a friggin' high energy exercise. You know, there's a lot of muscle being used here. If you were to do like a bunch of those in a row, you're gonna probably get out of breath. So then if you were to like recover by doing like a plank, which is a hard exercise, but it's a hard exercise that doesn't burn a lot of calories, you know, it doesn't burn a lot of energy. Well, then your cardiorespiratory system is going to recover. And then if let's say you go and you do a lunge to lateral raise, right? That's also a very high calorie burn exercise. And then you recover by doing, I don't know, crunches. Yeah, we'll throw some, it'll just be ab stuff. And it's like, okay, so now our intensities goes up and then our intensity comes down. You can do interval training within your circuits. That is a very effective way to do things. You know, if you're doing lifting for 90 seconds at a time, you know, yeah, your heart rate's going to go up. Here's a really good example of 3 different circuits, one for each level of the OPT, right? So in the stabilization level, maybe you do a ball chest press, followed by a ball row, followed by single leg scaption, followed by a single leg curl, single leg extension, or no, ball dumbbell tricep extension, step up to balance, and then you rest. Cool. We used all stabilization exercises. We were under tension for a while, you know. If you did 12 reps of each of these, 7 seconds per rep, 84 times 1, 2, 3, 6. That's going to be 504 seconds. It's 8.5 minutes to get through this circuit if you're moving at a slow tempo, which is what we move at when we're in stabilization. And then we take 60 seconds rest and go back. Pretty good, you know. Strength side of things, a little bit faster movement, but heavier weights now. So a dumbbell chest press, a machine row, seated overhead press, barbell curl, tricep push down, and then lunges. Cool. Love that. Good strength circuit, you know. Take rest at the end. And the circuit's a little bit shorter because, you know, your tempo is much faster. Maybe you lift heavier. And then same thing with the power side of things. You'll notice the power one is shorter. That's because we don't have arm exercises in the power level. There are no explosive single joint exercises. It would be pretty silly to just do your tricep like, you know, and nothing else. So it's always, you know, your tricep plus your shoulder plus your elbow. You know, it's like, or your wrist. You know, it's like a we only use multi-joint exercises in power. We never use just single joints. Can you imagine like trying to like work on your jump by just doing like calves only? Like, it'd be pretty silly looking, you know? So that's the power, you know, medicine ball, chest pass, soccer throw, scoop toss, and then squat jumps. Chest, back, shoulders, legs. So circuit training has been shown to be just as beneficial as your sort of traditional approach to cardio when it comes to improving your fitness levels. And it has been shown to produce even higher levels of EPOC and strength. This is another reason why I actually think CrossFit is a great way to lose fat as long as you can keep yourself safe. There's a CrossFit workout called the Fran. This freaking thing is brutal. And it is where you do, as fast as you can, 21 thrusters. So that's a squat to shoulder press, 21 pull-ups, and then you do 15 thrusters, 15 pull-ups, 9 thrusters, 9 pull-ups. Fast as you can get through it. That's the workout. You can take rest as you need to, but you're trying to get through it as fast as you can. And because you're going as fast as you can, and people are, you're really trying to push yourself to get through that as quickly as you can, guess what? It burns a lot of calories in a very short period of time, and your body will generate high levels of EPOC because you're doing it as this kind of big, long circuit. Talking about incorporating circuit training, let's say you got a client who can only work out 3 days a week, right? Maybe even let's say you get a client who can only work out 2 days per week, right? You're going to need to address their strength training and their cardio in not that many sessions. So here's a way that we can incorporate plenty of strength training while also doing cardio simultaneously. If you got a beginner client, let's say they're in a stabilization level, your session might begin with 5 to 10 minutes of flexibility training where we do a little bit of foam rolling, a little bit of static stretching. Then we're gonna do like 5 to 10 minutes in stage 1 cardio. So it's like, hey, let's get your heart rate up just a little bit, right? So we do stage 1 cardio there. Then 15 to 20 minutes of circuit training. So we set up like, let's say we set up a circuit that takes 5 minutes to get through, right? And they do 4 rounds of that. Cool, love that. Yeah, that's great. What was our stabilization circuit? It was 8.5 minutes, right? So if they did 3 rounds of that, that's it's about 24 minutes, I guess. But yeah, I'd probably end up doing 2 rounds of that. But that's still pretty good. That's 16, 17 minutes worth of work, right? And then we throw them back on that treadmill again and go through 5 to 10 minutes of cardio, get a good calorie burn in there in zone 1, and then 5 to 10 minutes of flexibility training at the end. If you were to really shave this off a little bit, 5 minutes of flexibility, 5 minutes, on both sides, and then 5 minutes of stage 1 cardio in both, just keep the warm up to, then your warm up's only like 10 minutes. That's 20 minutes here. That's 20 minutes here. You got 40 minutes to commit to circuit training now. So you could get through that 8.5 minute circuit that we saw. You could get through that. About 4 times, 4.5 times maybe, so that's pretty good. That's really, really, really good. Strength level clients, same concept here, right? Except now 5 to 10 minutes of like warming up, and you would use self-myofascial release, but now they're in strength level, so they're going to do active stretches instead of static stretches, because that's what we do in level 2. They're going to do stage 2 cardio, so they're going to incorporate a little bit of zone 2 now. So maybe they do 5 minutes. Yeah, we'll extend our cardio here. They do 5 minutes of zone 1 cardio where they're at 65%, and then they do a little bit of interval, and the remaining 5 minutes is like 1 minute at 80%, 1 minute at 70, 1 minute at 80, 1 minute at 70, 1 more minute at 80, and then they're done with their cardio. They get a little bit of interval training in there, right? And then 15 to 20 minutes of circuit training. Maybe we give them a Fran, maybe we give them that little like thruster pull-up routine. And then we go back to those intervals. And then we stretch our client out and let them go home, right? 5 to 10 minutes, cooling down, static stretches this time because it is the cool down. We don't care about turning their muscles off when they're leaving the gym. Or maybe it's a client who's in the power level, right? This client's going to get a really intense, little circuit here. Maybe we do 5 to 10 minutes of flexibility where it's foam rolling and then dynamic stretches. They get a little circuit in there, which honestly, that's going to warm them up cardio wise. So then we can already dive straight into the interval training. Maybe we do 10 minutes, 1 minute at 90% of their heart rate, 1 minute at 80%, 1 minute at 70%. Repeat. We do 3 sets of that. That's 9 minutes. Great. And then we do a 15 to 20 minute circuit of super explosive movements, squat jumps. There's a, let's see here, squat jump, or let's see, box jump. Look at a CrossFit approach to this. The quick and the dead. What is this? Okay, that's a weird rep scheme. Here we go. Yeah, okay, this is, here we go. Perfect power exercise, right? 5 rounds, fast as you can go, 12 push presses, 20 box jumps. Push press, box jump, box jump, box jump, right? There's a very, you got your shoulders, you got your legs, Again, I'd probably want to do like more body parts. Same thing is true of the other one we were talking about. But there we go. Takes you 20 minutes, get a little bit of circuit training in there. Throw it back on the treadmill, get those intervals in, stretch it out, head home. Right? So that's how you could possibly flow a session. Now, is that the best way to gain strength? I don't think so. But it's a great way to burn an ton of calories, and it keeps your client moving the entire time, and it keeps them like focused. Do I honestly do like high intensity cardio in the beginning and at the end of my session? Not really. A lot of times I like to do them together. I will do a really gentle cardio warm up in the beginning, take them through an extended strength training session, and then have them do a little bit of cardio when they leave, and then cool down. That's my favorite approach, but there's nothing wrong with doing it this way. It's a really good approach as well. So summarizing everything up, exercise, lots of benefits, including weight loss. Ideally, we are trying to have our client improve their NEAT levels outside of the gym, while they are also improving their calorie burn through activity inside the gym as well. And when it comes to producing a calorie burn in the gym, it's almost, and I say almost, but it's almost less about the calories they burn in the gym and more about how much of that EPOC they can generate while they're there. I always tell my clients, the harder you work right now, the more calories you will burn later. And that is always a priority. Really quickly, I do want to show you guys, I'm going to attach this to the email today and give this to you as a handout. This right here is sort of an all phase guide to the OPT model. So you can see like it starts with like the little warm up section where we address flexibility and cardio, right? So you would write stable, if your client is in stabilization, these are the things that you are allowed to write. If your client is in strength, these are the things you're allowed to write. If your client's in power, it's these things. Cardio, same thing. You got a level 1, you got a level 2, you got a level 3. Same thing for our core balance reactive. You got core training, you got level 1 core training, level 2 core training, level 3, right? Balance, 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 reactive, reactive, reactive. And then the SAQ approach to it. Basically, this is just a different approach. Normally, we look at that big chart and it's like, kind of like tables and columns and things. But this version just looks a little bit different for you guys. Some people find it helpful. It's a kind of a click moment for some people. Some people are like, I don't know, I like the other version better. Great. It doesn't matter to me. Whichever version helps you understand this and absorb it really well, that's what I care about. And that's about it. Cody, Lorianne, Bay, how you guys feeling?
Okay.
Yeah. Feeling great.
Cool. I was nice to CrossFit today. It's rare for me. They were a good example of our little fat loss routines. All right, let me kill the